I'm here to tell you a little bit about Public Works, and it's broken into two groups, actually. We have our day-to-day staff, the operations staff, which work out of the operations center, which I understand you'll visit later today. The second group is the administrative or engineering and technical staff, which work out of this building, and that works out to about a complement of 50 individuals. And we're guided by our mission statement to operate and maintain the services that are provided to meet or exceed the applicable regulatory requirements and or in accordance with the direction provided by council. So what do we do? We're involved in roads, and this involves the maintenance and operation of our road network, which is about 115 kilometers. It includes the road surface, the storm drainage systems, sidewalks, street lights, traffic lights, signs. And in late 2015, we completed our road needs study, which will set the priorities for the next 10 years. Annually, we undertake sidewalk panel replacements, line painting, curb and catch basin and maintenance hole repairs. And this picture, or this slide here, shows a number of construction projects, particularly First Avenue, which is being reconstructed just outside our building here. So hopefully you'll be able to see that one. Public transportation. Orangeville is proud of its public transportation system, which will be celebrating 25 years of service, which was commissioned in December of 1991. It features 3 routes to serve the town, which also includes accessibility component. Public Works has finished a transit optimization study in early 2016, which looks to upgrade our routes, construction of a new, more central transfer station, and to purchase new low-floor buses. Boulevard trees. Orangeville has approximately 7,300 boulevard trees. We have several programs directed at maintaining the urban forest, and for this reason, we've dedicated one staff to look after those trees. A new program initiated in 2015 is for the inspection of our boulevard trees to provide an early detection of risk and to reduce potential exposure to liability. Broadway medians. Public Works maintains 3 central medians running along Broadway, which are reflective of our town's heritage, and they provide a decorative backdrop for many community events, including the popular Christmas season. Public Works also maintains the clock tower found in the central median, which is from the old post office building, which was sadly demolished in 1963. These trees have been pruned just recently in 2016, and we're looking to remove and replace some of these trees with larger trees in 2017. And interesting to note that out of the medians, we use some of those trees for our Christmas tree, which stands out in front of the town hall. Stormwater management. Orangeville has 22 stormwater management ponds throughout the town, which treat urban runoff for water quality, water quantity, and downstream erosion control. And many of these ponds are integrated with our trails and natural valley land corridors. We're currently inspecting each one of these facilities to record appropriate maintenance measures for the subsequent years. Greenwood Cemetery. Public Works operates and maintains an 8.1 hectare cemetery. This cemetery has been in existence since 1870s, and it provides a great deal of insight into our history and heritage, as many of the town's historical figures can be found buried there, and I understand that you should be visiting that site later today too. Municipal water and treatment. Public Works is charged with the responsibility to provide clean and safe water to our population of approximately 28,000, and our water system is made up of 9,200 service connections, 12 groundwater supply wells, 4 storage reservoirs, and 115 kilometers of distribution pipe. In this heavily regulated aspect of our work, our trained staff have maintained compliance with all ministry regulations. Source water protection. Source water protection is a new initiative mandated under provincial legislation called the Clean Water Act. The initiative acts as the first barrier to the town's multi-barrier approach to ensuring safe drinking water. and it complements the municipal water treatment and distribution efforts by proactively protecting drinking water sources from contamination and depletion. Also, under the Source Water Protection Program, Public Works staff are responsible for implementing special source protection policies to address high-risk activities identified as threats to drinking water, and source protection policies apply in sensitive areas around municipal wells, where local water supplies are most vulnerable. And this plan shows you where those vulnerable areas are, where they are, and applicants of development will come in and speak with our source water protection staff to work out those strategies. Municipal wastewater collection and treatment, there are 175 kilometers of sanitary sewers collecting sewage throughout the town, which gets treated at the Orangeville Water Pollution Control Plant, and this facility is currently undergoing a $27 million expansion, and I believe that is the greatest project that the municipality has undertaken. Public Works is busy keeping Orangeville tidy. We have a number of waste bins throughout the downtown core, routinely emptied. Litter cleanup is undertaken particularly in the downtown core on a daily basis, and our staff continually provide liaison with the residents and store owners, so we ensure we are constantly aware of issues and concerns. Litter cleanup includes our open ditches, transit shelters, cul-de-sac islands, boulevards, and the town coordinates cleanup in various municipal lands with engaged community groups, and we're forever grateful for their help. Street sweeping, the entire town is swept in the spring, and we participate in many Earth Week activities such as tree planting, Make Orangeville Shine, environmental awards are handed out, urban farming workshops are held, and the downtown core is swept, as I mentioned, bi-weekly. Road salt is road sand and catch basin sand material is collected, it's stockpiled, it is then tested and recycled where applicable, and it's primarily used for fill. Weed removal on Broadway, weed removal is carried out by steaming on a need-be basis, and we use the same approach on our traffic islands and parking lot areas. As part of Public Works operating budget, street and rear lane repaving projects are undertaken on an annual basis to provide well-managed and safe traffic flow for pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicular traffic. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention about sidewalk snow clearing, and in this picture in the lower right-hand corner you can see the many challenges that we face in doing that each year, and we expend a lot of resources going back and repairing the boulevard areas. We have taken steps this year to hopefully alleviate some of those problems. Environmental sustainability, Public Works has a number of initiatives. We subsidize fares for special needs and individual groups that use our transit system, and with our new transit optimization study, we will be looking at new hours of operation and accessibility and routes and coverage, and that will be coming in the years 2017, 2018. Toilet rebate for low flush toilets continues to be a popular conservation program, with 95 rebate transactions being completed in 2015 and approximately 50 to date. Rain barrels are sold at our operations center, 75 were sold in 2015 with approximately 54 to date. Lawn watering bylaw was enacted to conserve water, thus maintaining an adequate supply. Having noted this, the installation of universal water metering has made a huge difference in conserving water. And when we look at this graph here, the blue line represents our population growth, which shows a steady incline. However, in the year 2003, you will notice there is a significant drop in the red line, which was our maximum day flow, and that represents where universal water metering was put in place. As well, you will notice that the average day flow is dropping, so we've implemented a number of measures which have significantly conserved our water in this headwaters area. I mentioned the stormwater management ponds before. One project that we've just completed in late winter of 2016 is Mill Creek. a $2 million project to restore Mill Creek, which runs through the center of town. This was an extremely challenging project as the creek runs through approximately 30 private properties. We had to cooperatively work with them. We worked with the Conservation Authority as well as Trout Unlimited, and I hope that you have time to see this project. We're very proud of it. Low impact development, we're working with the development industry to implement site design strategies, rainwater harvesting, enhanced vegetated swales and buffer strips and so forth. We've initiated discussions on a tree water bag program to provide watering maintenance to vulnerable boulevard trees, and this encourages public ownership and stewardship of those trees. In preserving our heritage, we assist in maintaining the tree sculptures in regards to constructing concrete bases and preservatives on the sculptures. I mentioned the Broadway medians where we maintain the clock tower. Wayfinding signage, we've worked with the Economic Development Group on new signage for directing tourists to various points of interest in the town. Our urban forest, we spend considerable effort in pruning and training our trees and undertaking dead tree removals. This aspect of our work was significantly impacted by the ice storm, Easter, March of 2016. And as you can see from this photograph, this is typical of a number of trees that were broken and lost during that time. And if it wasn't for our friends to the south, Brampton Forestry crew, who helped us out, I'm sure we'd be still removing trees today. Tree replacement, we budget approximately for about 50 to 75 replacement trees each year, and we work with our arborists to select the appropriate trees and the planting time. And lastly, our Emerald Ash Borer program is in its third year of a 10-year plan, where we remove approximately 75 trees each year to replace, and we will replace those with a new suitable tree. The homeowner participates in that program.
Good morning. We're really happy to be here to talk a little bit about the heritage preservation efforts that are going on in town. As Jeremy mentioned, we are members of Heritage Orangeville, and we kind of see ourselves as bridging the gap between the town and residents, trying to create a cohesive effort between the town and residents to preserve our heritage. So let's get started. So the town's logo describes the town as having historic charm and a dynamic future, and the challenge with heritage preservation is to preserve what's there as you move forward into the future, and the town is doing a pretty good job of doing that. So it's just to talk a little bit about the town's efforts. There's four major things that Diana and I talked about when we were getting ready for this presentation. And the first is something that's going on right now is an official plan review, which we are participating in. And through that review, we are strengthening the heritage policies outlined in the official plan to make it easier to continue efforts that have already been taking place to preserve heritage. In Orangeville, we're very happy to have a very successful heritage conservation district in our downtown area. It's been operating for about 13 years, and we've had great relations with owners and the town in improving properties through our facade grant improvement program, where there's a matching program of money from the town and the owner to improve and preserve these really important Victorian buildings on Broadway. So a facade improvement grant program, we have a special sign policy area in the downtown to improve signage to complement the Victorian buildings. And also the town, as you've heard a little bit from John, is really working on improving the streetscape through trees, the median, all the plantings that take place, decorating it for various seasons. We have beautiful Christmas lights. It's a really beautiful place. With beautiful backdrop of Victorian buildings, but lots going on in there to enhance that. And right now, we are working on 2 new heritage conservation districts. We're in the study process. one including the Prince of Wales Road area, which is First Avenue and area, and one which we're calling the Merchant area, which is West Broadway, Zina, York Street, and Bethia. So we're busily working on trying to create 2 new heritage conservation districts, which are distinct from the downtown one in that they're mostly residential. So we're reaching out right now to the community to do that study. And these are the proposed study areas. So quite large. It will include much of the original village of Orangeville. So we're really excited in preserving more, not just the core commercial area, but some of the residential areas as well. We also continually move ahead with single property designations. We've had great compliance with individuals in designating important buildings in the town. But as well as designations, we have an awareness plaque program which we advertise to the community, and people get excited about doing the research on their own home, and then we recognize it with an awareness plaque. John talked a bit about the Mill Creek rehabilitation, and Mill Creek is why Orangeville even exists in the first place. And without the creek, excuse me, and the topography, which allowed for about a 150-foot drop in elevation across a very relatively small part of town, it enabled settlers to come and build mills and kind of become the focus of this community, which we now call Orangeville. So the rehabilitation of Mill Creek we really see as a great heritage initiative. It involved the removal of non-native and dying trees, restructuring the creek bed to reduce the erosion, and also to provide habitat areas for fish and other aquatic life. And the little picture on the left there, it's hard to see, but all that little black stuff in the water, those are tadpoles. I took that picture 2 weeks ago. And in the spring, I live on the creek, so in the spring we heard frogs singing like we've never heard before. And I understand frogs are a little bit like the aquatic version of canaries in the coal mine. So the fact that there are so many tadpoles and we're seeing the return of aquatic life, we're really excited about that Mill Creek is getting back to a more original state of health. As part of the program, we've introduced interpretive signage. So just people see the creek and didn't really know what its significance was. So Heritage Orangeville and Economic Development have put interpretive signage at the bridges that cross Mill Creek in the older part of town so that people can get a sense of how important Mill Creek is to the heritage of our town. And these are just some images. Orange Lawrence came here, bought up lots of land, built mills. He brought daughters and who married sons who also built mills and who went on to be important people in the community. Now the residents do a lot too, working with the town to preserve our heritage. As I mentioned before, individuals participate by designating their properties, and this is a beautiful set of Victorian row houses on Zina Street that were designated a number of years ago and are beautifully maintained. This is an example of one of our heritage plaques. So again, people research their homes, and we are very proud to be able to recognize the work that they've done through the awareness plaques. And Diana's going to talk a little bit about our Heritage Award program for residents.
This is something new that we've just started, and I think it's going to be very, very successful. We try to give 3 awards to houses in the area for things that they might have done to improve and maintain their heritage aspects. So when we're looking at these 2, we see a before and after picture of one of our winners last year. That one, it was the before. It has a lot of really good heritage aspects, as you can see. And if you go to the second one, you can now see where they have really put back that Victorian feeling. But in so doing, they have also worked on their landscaping, and she's in the process of using part of their land to include flowering, not just flowering shrubs, but things that will produce like raspberries and blackberries, things that would have been native to the area as well, because a lot of the towns we were finding out had large lots and used them for agriculture in that respect. They were their market gardens. And in fact, in the 1890s, it's interesting, when there was a depression, that there were people renting out their land for people to be able to grow their own gardens on that, and selling produce that they had. And you might keep a cow. On Sarah Street, there's the story of the people who had a couple of cows, and they actually walked back with the cows down to the railway station, which should be going down to that area, because there's a lot of grazing land there, and they used that, and they brought it back. So little interesting things like that. So that's going to be an ongoing thing, and I think it's very, very good. Linda?
I mentioned our Heritage Conservation District studies that are going on, and public input is a huge part of that. And on June 21st, we had our first public consultation meeting, and if you want to, we had lots of great feedback from the meeting, and one of the great messages, or the main messages we received, is the importance of our streetscape and our boulevard trees. And I just put a couple of samples here. Pretty much everyone commented that they would like to see an aggressive policy for maintaining and improving our urban treescape.
We've also had a lot of community engagement, as you can see, and we're very, very proud with what we can do. What we do every year, and I think I gave you an example of one, we have the Heritage Calendar. We put that out on a yearly basis and try to pick up a theme. Last year it was on transportation. Next year, being 1867, it will look on our sesquicentennial. We also have, with Founders Day, we operate walking tours if they're asked for. Now, we do guided tours when requested, but we also have a guided tour, self-guided tour book that is available to anybody in town and any tourists, and that's a free thing, and we're very pleased with that. We've also done activities such as the Heritage Scavenger Hunt, where there's a little present from the BIA for people who have gone around town and found heritage things that they have to look for. Our Heritage Week, which comes in February, we try to keep a heritage displays going on an ongoing process like that. We also have one that goes in the train station that talks about the history of the train coming to Orangeville in 1871, and that was really, really important to the future of Orangeville. We have done school programs where we try and tie in with something that they are using, and anything to get the involvement of the community. It's surprising. It's a wonderful, wonderful town with a fantastic historic core. And unfortunately, a lot of people who live here and have lived here all their lives don't realize how wonderful this little town is. And so part of our mandate really is to make sure that people who live here, not just visitors, appreciate what Orangeville has to give towards their community. Thank you.
Thanks very much for inviting me here today, and I'm here to talk about MPART, how Headwaters Communities in Action and Communities in Bloom intersected, and how initiatives like this contribute to community well-being. We are an organization that is citizens-based, came together from people having conversations, talking about issues of shared concern in the community and how those should be addressed. How we look today, sort of our visible signs are the organizations, groups and efforts actually that we support. One is DC Moves. DC Moves is an all-agency collaborative where all the agencies in Dufferin get together to share information and look for opportunities to collaborate on issues of shared concern. Our chat group, which started as our Trails group, and it's now Citizens of Headwaters for Active Transportation team, and Headwaters Food and Farming Alliance, which looks at a resilient food system and how to make it more sustainable, resilient, and how to connect people with their food system better as well. And I want to make mention too, I guess my first experience with Communities in Bloom was way back when I lived in Richmond Hill, and those little signs would appear on people's lawns, and I was working so hard. I got all the gardening magazines, and I was just sure that my little garden was going to get one of those little signs. And instead, my neighbor Nancy, who had her garden professionally installed, which I thought was cheating, got one of those little signs, and I was most annoyed. And here we are, 12 to 15 years later, I'm working on an initiative that recognizes the other values of communities in bloom. And I've also moved on to vegetables, by the way, so we're all good. So the mission of our organization, we're a backbone organization for different initiatives. So if a group of people come together about an initiative and want to get going on something, if they want to apply for a grant or they need some sort of backup and support, we can provide that without them having to incorporate and get insurance and all those other things that are expensive and time-consuming. We are a catalyst for positive community change. We engaged citizens to work collaboratively for community well-being. And we don't do this by ourselves. We are a collaborative of a number of organizations. So first of all, we're funded by Trillium and United Way primarily, but not only. We also get little pockets of funding from other organizations on project-specific initiatives. So we've gotten funding from Dufferin County, we've gotten funding from Public Health, and these other organizations provide in-kind support to us. And that is, sometimes it's free meeting space, sometimes it's different types of resources, sometimes it's putting expertise at the table when we're talking about different things. And this isn't a comprehensive list either. This list grows and shrinks and has included over the last 10 to 12 years way more organizations than this. I'm not sure I could come up with a number, but it's a lot. The history of HCIA started as a social prosperity project long before I came along. And that was really in those early days when some citizens got together and thought, there's things happening in the community that we think we could support, we think we could help things grow. What is it that people value in this community? And what are the things that we need to focus on? Incorporated in 2004 as HCIA, did a well-being initiative between 2008 and 11, and that was really doing a specific measurement, a survey out in the community. What is it that people value? What do they like about living here? And what are the things that we need to focus on? In other words, identifying community priorities. We are still in the midst of a well-being refresh initiative. That was a new survey, new citizens conversations, new data being taken in. We've got that Canadian Index of Well-Being. That's established a whole list of indicators. Some of them are appropriate to our region and some of them aren't. So you've got to incorporate this new information and keep it somewhat standard and in line with what's going on elsewhere. We formed the foundations of a healthy community and again identified those new community priorities. Our foundation work was developed around 2005, and it established the 5 pillars and indicators for evaluation. The 5 pillars are healthy people, engaged citizens, dynamic economy, sustainable environment, and vibrant culture. And I highlight sustainable environment because that's the bucket that kind of includes outdoor spaces, people's connection with the outside. It's not just about a sustainable environment, although that's one of the primary things. But that's kind of a bucket that includes all things outdoors. Our community priorities, as identified currently, are in 4 clusters. And here's where we really start to see the intersection with communities in bloom. Seniors and youth, a growing point of concern. How to engage youth and how to engage seniors too. We've got a growing seniors population. They want to get out there and do stuff and they want to join in. And we need to look at how to make those connections better. The economy, always a concern. Jobs and job opportunities and learning, always a concern in the community. And connectivity is really becoming identified as something that people are looking towards as what they need and what would make the community a better place to live. We have pretty good connectivity here in Headwaters. Connectivity covers a number of things. It's actually a lot about community safety, which is interesting too. When people talk about, I want to feel safe in my community, they actually are talking about they want to feel connected to their neighbors and connected to their environment and the community at large. And initiatives like this, Communities in Bloom, as you well know, are one of those initiatives that help people connect. People are doing something that they love, they're engaging in the community, and an initiative like this helps connect them and makes them feel good about living in Headwaters and living in Orangeville. We've also, in our latest study, reaffirmed those 2011 priorities. And those were trails, food, the nonprofit sector, and rural transportation. Now, it's actually through our food portfolio that HCIA became directly connected with Communities in Bloom, because it was one of our really super and active volunteers in the food group who was focusing on food access. And food access is really access for people that are in need and don't typically perhaps have access to healthy, local, fresh food. And she worked very hard on that food access committee, getting it up off the ground, getting a couple of initiatives going. One was Do the Math, where people came together, took a food bank diet for 3 to 5 days, wrote a blog on it, and really raised awareness in the community about what it's like for people having to do without food and having to rely on a food bank. That helped get more conversations off the ground and led to ultimately the formation of a poverty task force. So the partnerships that we help support in the community and that are already happening in the community lead to amazing opportunities, some that were expected and some not. We collaborate on issues of shared concern. That happens in so many ways. We build capacity in not-for-profits and also in other organizations, as we're seeing today. All of us working through various ways to make life better together. So HCIA is very proud and happy today to be included in this event, and thank you so much, Communities in Bloom, for contributing to making life better together. Thank you.
So yeah, I'm a technician at Credit Valley Conservation Authority, and thank you for having me here today to talk a little bit about our invasive species program and also some work that we're doing at Island Lake Conservation Authority. Oh. Okay, so just quickly to go over some definitions. So a native species can be described as a species that has existed in a given area, such as Orangeville, prior to European settlement, whereas a non-native species is one that's been introduced from another geographic range. So it's been brought into the area and kind of grows happily in its own little spot. And then controversially, an invasive species is described as the same types of non-native plants that have been moved here. However, they're not happy in their little spot, and they can take over the area and cause economic or environmental harm or harm to human health. So looking at some of those impacts, we have impacts on ecological goods and services with invasive species, so that deals with the purification of air and water and soil. It interrupts regular nutrient cycling and can cause damage to the environmental services. It also can cause issues with human health and safety, such as with giant hogweed, seen there on the right-hand side, which can cause a lot of skin burns and reactions. Can cause damages to infrastructure through damages to water-taking pipes, bank stability, erosion issues, and also impacts to natural resource-dependent industries, so agriculture, fishing, and forestry. So the CVC program addresses a variety of invasive fauna and flora, looking at both terrestrial and aquatic organisms. Our group particularly focuses on terrestrial plants and insects that impact our conservation areas and surrounding lands. So priorities for our program are monitoring and mapping the spread and control of invasive species. So that's looking at where invasive species populations are, which ones are in our conservation areas and surrounding lands, as well as how those populations are moving and growing, and how control efforts are kind of decreasing or increasing or not changing those populations. We also focus on prioritizing invasive species control efforts in areas that are high in biodiversity, so preserving those biodiversity hotspots, any species at risk, as well as threatened species that we have in our area, and also decreasing populations of pioneer invaders. So that helps us kind of attack populations of invasive species when they first get started, rather than letting them grow into a large problem. If you can kind of nip that in the butt quickly, it saves a lot of time and money and makes it a lot easier for us. We also prioritize which invasive species get managed, so that can be looking at what would be most ecologically beneficial to get rid of first, as well as what's the most cost efficient and time efficient. And then when we take those priorities, we can look at developing and applying appropriate control measures that are effective and cost efficient. So we have a variety of mechanisms that we use depending on which species it is and where it is. So this can be tarping, mechanically removing things with reed wrenches, applying herbicides, cutting things down, pulling plants out. We have a lot of different techniques that we use. And finally, we provide support for a lot of different community groups, landowners, municipal partners, and other conservation agencies. So this includes providing information, doing fairs and information booths, and leading community events such as garlic mustard pulls. So with that, I'd like to move on and talk a little bit about some of the work we've done at Island Lake. Island Lake is one of our larger conservation areas. It has a 400-acre reservoir and about almost 15 kilometers of trails. It has a wide variety of habitats, including wetlands, hardwood forest, and plantation, and it's a hotspot for water sports, ice fishing, hiking, and a lot of family community events. So some of the projects that we wanted to talk about are purple loosestrife, dog strangling vine, Phragmites, garlic mustard, and emerald ash borer. So purple loosestrife is native to Europe and Asia and was introduced as a garden plant. It invades wetlands, roadsides, and disturbed areas, and it forms very thick, dense mats with its roots that prevents native species from growing. It takes nutrients and space away from those, and it can clog drainage channels and flood farmlands. So at Island Lake, all the populations of purple loosestrife are identified with the purple dots, and you can see they are focused around areas near the reservoir and kind of in the wetland area to the south of the reservoir there. So what can we do about purple loosestrife? We don't actually control it day to day at CVC because there was a Biocontrol released in 1992, which is the black margarine purple loosestrife beetle, and that's the Galaricella beetle, and its caterpillar form and the adults both feed on the leaves and the shoots of purple loosestrife, and it's also from Europe and Asia, so the home range of purple loosestrife, and it was brought over because it exclusively eats the plant. And so it's become widely established in about 30 states and 8 provinces and has been really successful at reducing the population. And it can be reintroduced in areas when the population decreases, because as it exclusively eats purple loosestrife, as the loosestrife populations decline, the population of the beetle will also go down. So if loosestrife bumps back up, we can reintroduce that. And that's exactly what we did this year at Island Lake. So you can see the red circle here is an area where we did 2 introductions this year at the end of June in order to reintroduce the beetle population and get that thriving so that we can bring down populations of loosestrife. So the next one I wanted to talk about was dog strangling vine. So DSV is also native to Europe and Asia, and it was introduced as an ornamental plant in the 1800s. So this grows in open sunny areas and areas that have light shade, and it forms really dense stands that can crowd out native species. It prevents forest regeneration because it completely covers sort of the first 2 to 3 feet of the ground. It also can be the leaves and the roots can be toxic to livestock, which can cause problems for hay production. And it threatens the monarch butterfly because it's also in the milkweed family, and butterflies can become confused. The flowers look very similar, and they'll lay their eggs on the plant, which isn't viable for the caterpillars. They can't actually eat it, and so the populations can go down. It's also really prolific. So a medium to dense stand can produce about 28,000 seeds per square meter. And the seeds are very milkweed-like. They float really long distances on the wind, and new plants can grow really easily from root fragments, which makes it really difficult to pull out or dig up. So quickly, you can have an area going from a regular plantation to something like this. So at Island Lake, we have several populations, one in kind of the north side of the map there, where just south of the cemetery, and then several kind of throughout the memorial forest area, and then kind of along the main roadways. And so we have been controlling this since about 2011. And so you can see in the left-hand side, we have the photo before control in 2011. And then on the right-hand side, at the cemetery population, we have the 2016 photo, which was just taken in May. And you can see that there's a drastic difference. There still are a few small DSV around, but I feel like we're making progress in there. So the next one that we wanted to talk about was Phragmites. So Phragmites was also introduced from Europe and Asia. It grows in disturbed areas, wetlands, stream banks, roadsides, ditches, and wet fields. It also forms really dense monocultures. It decreases native plant biodiversity and also decreases habitat for a lot of sensitive species such as turtles, frogs, and wetland nesting birds. So at Island Lake, we have most of our populations are in and around the reservoir and also in the wetland area near where the purple loosestrife was. Now the issues with that is that normally when we treat Phragmites populations, we use a foliar herbicide, a glyphosate-based product, usually Vision Max or Weather Max. However, you can't spray those populations when they're on or in the water due to the surfactant in the chemical. So we're forced to leave a buffer strip between the water's edge and the spray zone in order to protect the environment. And that makes it impossible to spray some of the populations at Island Lake. Because we can't get them all, they'll just simply resprout and retake over those areas. So solutions are, currently we're waiting, there's a new herbicide formulation called Habitat, which is designed to spray in and around and over water. It's safe for use in water environments. And it's currently been approved in the US for, I think, about 4 to 5 years now. And they've had a lot of success looking at Phragmites projects with it. And so the approval for use in Canada is pending. So we're really excited that hopefully we'll be able to tackle some of those populations. But in the meantime, we work on cutting the Phragmites back. We can clip off the seed heads or mow them down with a tri-blade weed whacker. And that doesn't decrease the patch size, but it can stop seeds from spreading to new areas and keep the populations in check. Okay, so the last plant I wanted to talk about was garlic mustard. And so it was introduced to it was native to Europe and introduced to North America as an edible herb because it's really high in vitamin A and vitamin C, and it has a really sort of garlicky, kind of peppery taste. It forms dense monocultures in forest understories, riverbanks, and roadsides, and it's also really prolific. It can produce up to 60,000 seeds per square meter. They're really, really small, and a patch size can double about every 4 years. It can invade undisturbed forests and take away space that's used by native wildflowers, and this can impact populations of species at risk, some of our more rare plants. And at Island Lake, we have populations kind of along the common spread vectors, so areas near trails, near streams, a lot of places where people walk their dogs or go fishing and have carried those seeds kind of along with them. So what we're doing about it is we found a really great way to take care of garlic mustard populations is to just pull the plants out. This removes the seed source if you do it early enough in the year, and then can leave space for native plants to grow. So we do a lot of garlic mustard pulls. These are undertaken by CVC staff. We have a great conservation youth corps program that does volunteer hours for high school students, so they come out and do projects for us. And we also have a lot of community groups doing pulls. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to talk about was the emerald ash borer. And so it is a beetle that's native to Asia, and it was introduced to eastern North America in 2002, and is spread north and west due to the movement of the beetle itself, and also through the transport of wood and wood products. And it attacks all true ash species, whether they're stressed or healthy. It does tend to go after trees that are in open areas first, and then move kind of into close canopy areas. And it kills trees by slowly girdling them. So the adult beetles will lay their eggs under the bark, and as the larvae grow, they kind of move through the sapwood in an S-shaped pattern that you can see on the right-hand side, growing bigger as they go. And once the tree is covered in those galleries, it essentially stops the transport of water and nutrients up and down the trunk, and this causes the tree to slowly die. So this is obviously a problem because it creates hazard trees and lowers the diversity of city streets and parks and forests. So what we're doing at Island Lake and a lot of our other properties is protecting the trees by injecting them with a chemical called triazine. So triazine is an insecticide made from neem tree seed extracts, and it kills insect larvae by disrupting the molting process, so basically preventing them from growing and developing. It also reduces fertility and egg viability in the adult females that have fed on the foliage. And it provides 2-year control of EAB. So what we do is we inject the trees using these pressurized canisters that you can see on the right-hand side. And we select trees. The chemical's really expensive. It costs about $600 a liter. So we have to be really choosy on who we decide to inject. So trees that are selected have to have at least 70% canopy. And we focus on trees that are heritage size, so ones that are really big around, and ones that are in high-use areas, so recreational areas, playing fields, educational centers, trails, boardwalks. And we have injected about 42 trees at Island Lake this year, And so as you can see, they're kind of along the trails and in the highest areas. And then we'll be continuing to inject these trees every 2 years or so, and we monitor the health of them every year to make sure they're still healthy enough to continue to uptake the chemical, and the chemical's doing a great job.
I'm going to start with our facilities. We have our newest facility, which is Alder Street Rec Center, and that houses 2 arena ice pads. We've got a 6-lane pool and another small leisure pool with water toys and whatnot in it, and also an indoor water slide that's 14 feet high. The center also houses a walking track, which is approximately about 188 meters in length, and that'll depend on whether you're walking on the inside or the outside. You'll lose a meter either way. Also within that building is the Twisters Gymnastics and Trampoline Club, and also the Town of Orangeville has a library located there as well. Humber College is part of the building. They have a campus there, and at present they use some of our multi-purpose rooms that we also use after they're finished with them for groups that we have that want to book them out. The town also runs the food concession that's within the building. Some of the outdoor amenities include a BMX bike track, which is in the north part of it, and in the north part of the property is also sports fields that are used by our mini soccer fields by the Orangeville Minor Soccer. The other facility we have, which is much older, it's been established quite a while ago in Orangeville, is the Tony Rose Memorial Sports Center. Again, we have 2 ice pads there and floor pads, a 6-lane lap pool, and again, it has a large banquet hall with a warming kitchen. And there's 2 other multi-purpose rooms in there that are available for community use. And again, we have another food concession there that is operated at this time by the town. So moving on to areas that I know a little more about is the park side of things. We currently offer 32 municipally owned parks with 20 of them right now of the 32 have playgrounds that are in use for the residents of the town. We also have a fully accessible playground at the Harvey Curry Park, which was installed a number of years ago in, I believe, around 2000. Which was brought in with a lot of fundraising through a group called Every Kids, since the name of the playground, Every Kids Park. If you ask people, that's where we were yesterday, so if you ask people where Harvey Curry is, they'll say, I don't know. Every Kids Park? Yes, they know exactly where it is. We also, again, Harvey Curry Park, we have another splash pad that just came online last year at Fenley Park. Also, BMX Park, which is at Alder Street in the parklands. We have a 10,000 square foot skate park, which is located at the Rotary Park at the east end of town. When weather permits us, we have 4 outdoor ice rinks that we maintain in the winter months, and also a off-leash dog park that is kind of on the north side of town. We have many other amenities, including ball diamonds, tennis courts, and soccer fields. We also have some multi-purpose courts that kids play basketball on. As I mentioned, play structures. We have, within those 20, we have, at this time, with the changes to the Accessibility Act, we have 3 that are accessible playgrounds. The one at Harvey Curry is one of the largest is the largest one we have for full inclusion. 2 splash pads, and the newest one at Fenley Park is a full recycling system compared to the one at Harvey Curry, which is goes to drain. The Horticulture Society, the Town of Orangeville, our Parks Department, we work as closely as we can with the Horticulture Society. We try to assist them whenever we can and try to help them out as we can with delivering mulch and picking up anything that they leave behind that they can't dispose of, such as their clippings and prunings. Right now we have a seasonal horticulturist on staff, which we hope we will be filling shortly as a full-time person as soon as we can. And that person looks after all of the perennial and annual beds that we have, as long as with our shrubs and whatnot. And she has, depending on what work she's doing, she has a crew of staff that help her out with that during the summer. We also have some planter boxes that are located in a few of the town buildings that we maintain. And we've also brought online some more work at the railway station. It's one of the new facilities that we have taken over. The community garden and orchard, which is located on Center Street, was brought online 3 years ago, I believe. And came from the OSAC committee, the Orangeville Sustainability Action Team. There's 20 plots within the original side and 2 accessible garden plots for there. They have expanded it to another section the same size, and they're doing, I'm not 100% sure what they're growing for. I believe they grow it for community groups within town. Right now we're in the midst of developing 3 new parks. The Orangeville Lions Sports Park, which will have a lit soccer field, and as it's there, it's going to be some green generation lighting that's going in that field. There'll also be trail systems going through, fitness stations, and that'll also be joined by the existing sports pad that we have there as well. And that's one of the locations that whenever the winters are cold enough, it's a natural ice rink for skating and hockey. To add to that, 2 other parks, new park going in at Parkinson Crescent, which is a new development in town at the northwest side of town, and another one, a small parkette going in Young Court. We hope to have all those 3 areas finished by the mid-October, and they'll be ready for use hopefully next year. And those will, again, there'll be a multi-purpose court put into Parkinson, which will allow basketball and ball hockey to be played on it. Also this year, a new development is a new 700-meter trail, which runs from Bethia Street to Center Street. You'll be able to see some of that construction when you visit Casey Gardens. It's on the east side of the street from Senior Center where the trail will be starting. Maintenance. Parkland is cut on a weekly rotation, with sports fields being cut 3 times a week. Now this year has been an anomaly. Some of the sports fields are being cut weekly just because we have no irrigation on a number of fields and it's not needed. We have 4 fields that have irrigation, so we continue cutting those on a 3-time rotation each week. Our sports fields, we have 3 that are aerated and top dressed monthly. We do a shutdown of our 1 main soccer field now, so it can have a 3-day rest each month, and we can do a little more maintenance on it. Other sports fields are done twice a year. We try and get them in the fall for overseeding, top dressing, and then we put a fall application of fertilizer down. And then in the spring, depending on what the spring is like, we will augment any other maintenance that has to be done. Garbage receptacles are done weekly or as needed. Litter pickup through the parks is done when we do our morning openings. We have a number of areas that have to be open first thing in the morning, so staff go through and do a complete litter pickup and garbage change. The environmental programs we have, as I mentioned, the Fenley Park splash pad is a full recycling system, and that water basically is dumped once a year, and that's at the end of the season when we winterize. Pesticide use, again, is solely on noxious weeds in areas where we can treat it, and that's mainly dealing with giant hogweed and any poison ivy that we come across. And again, we gauge that to the location that it's in. If it's along a walkway, we treat it. Sometimes this year we've had to close a walkway for 2 weeks due to noxious weed being in there until it was fully exterminated. Also with again, staying with the environmental programs, the Lion Sports Park, the soccer field there is going to have the green generation energy efficient sports lighting on that field. And through the source water protection that we did for the park for development, we've increased the recharge in excess of 11% going back into the ground. Right now we have 12 kilometers of multi-use trails, which are primarily in the west end of town, which are asphalt walkways. We are slowly expanding our asphalt walkways throughout the town, and the trails do link to the Island Lake Conservation Area. We also have just over 115 acres of natural area space and/or conservation, which basically falls under conservation, and we manage it to their specifications and maintenance protocols. We have a number of community events that happen in town around, one of them being Make Orangeville Shine. We partner up with the service clubs and OSAT, and we do a large community cleanup for garbage and a large planting of certain areas in town of new shrubs and trees. They've been working along some of the roadsides in town and some of the stormwater management ponds this year. And again, a lot of those tree plantings were sponsored by the Orangeville Sustainability Action Team, TD, Friends of the Environment, Credit Valley, RBC, and the Orangeville Rotary Club. OSAT is another sponsor of they do an annual baby tree forest. Right now we have, I believe we have 7 that we have planted in various parks. And that's what they do is they'll plant a specific tree for one of the babies that people contribute to that. Mm-hmm. And then there's a sign posted there for each of the new babies that were born that were involved in the project. So later on they can go back and see their name on that and see that there's one of those trees was in their honor. This year, through the Recreation Committee, we introduced a new memorial statue that's located at Tony Rose for Mr. Perry Sanderson, who was one of the, I'm not a lacrosse person, so you have to excuse me here, but he was one of the founders of lacrosse and a big supporter of lacrosse through Orangeville and supporting it here. The town also, Parks and Rec also does a community matching fund. And what we do is we'll match funds up to $5,000 for projects to go through to help enhance our parks. One of them was the BMX park that's located at Alder Street. The Orangeville Lion Sports pad that was put in was another beneficiary to that. And I believe the Fenley Splash Pad was involved in that program as well.